afternoon. Welcome to another edition of the Rousseau Report. I'm your host, Dennis Rousseau. In the past, we've spoke to specific models of aircraft, such as the Citation CJ4, various Challenger models, Falcon 2000s, Gulfstream's G650, the Global 7500, whether it's how they originated, performance, their pluses, minuses, and the like. Today, we're going to speak to classifications. Why are models placed in certain categories? How do they fare with the nearest competitor? How do these various models play into long-term aircraft ownership? As always, we're going to reference AircraftPost data. And as you know, they track 70 current generation business jet models, comprising over 15,000 individual aircraft, with over 30 years of sales data. To preface, current generation is typically used to identify aircraft models equipped with EFIS, better known as a glass cockpit, whether it's CRT or LCD, and turbofan engines. In the 70s and early 1980s, we had three categories of aircraft: small, medium, and large, and a total population of around 1,500. Fast forward, we now have well over 25,000 purpose-built business jets globally. Small category, we find aircraft such as the Lear 35, Falcon 10, Westwind, that all had a small cabin with a range to match. Then we stepped up to the midsize and had aircraft such as the Hawker 700, Falcon 20 that featured a midsize cabin with a height of 5 feet 7 inches. And you would almost always make a fuel stop flying coast to coast in the US. The next step up was the large category that included the 731 Jetstar, G2 and 3. This latter group offered a 6-foot cabin height and offered plus or minus 2,300 nautical mile range. All three categories can be best depicted on a range map, and as you can see, nonstop to Europe was a stretch in any direction. Now let's assume you owned a small jet back in the 70s. Your business expands, and now as opposed to flying 1 to 2 hour missions, you're now flying coast to coast. And you're carrying 6 to 8 passengers instead of 4. You can purchase a second small jet and continue making stops, which costs time and money. Or you can upgrade to a larger size. And that's what drives business aviation. Now let's fast forward to today. Classifications have expanded. We took a step down from the small jet to the microjet, or better known as the very light jet, or VLJs. Now, these aircraft are not new to our industry per se, but have been in consideration in one form or another since the 1950s and 60s. Cessna introduced the Fanjet 500 in 1968, which subsequently evolved into the Citation, but early on, the FAA demanded a crew of 2. It wasn't until 2008 when the VLJs began replacing single-engine turboprops due to their low operating costs, their ability to operate from short-field runways, and flown single pilot, which is usually the owner. As the name implies, they're very small and designed to carry 4 passengers under 1,000 miles. The average cabin height is 4 feet 9 inches, and as you can see, they're very cramped for the average adult. Most do not have lav facilities, and even if they did, you're ashamed to use the potty seat due to close quarters. Price point new, $3 to $5 million. The next category is a small jet, which comprise aircraft such as the Lear 40, 45, CJ Series, Phenom 300, and the PC-24. Now, throughout this session, you'll hear me mention out of production versus current production. The former denotes aircraft no longer built, the latter continues in production. Both Cessna and Lear were notorious for building iterations of an aircraft and calling them new. In the case of the CJ Series, we had the CJ2, 2+, 3, 3+, and 4. And if we place them all side by side, it's difficult to tell one over the other unless we read the model number on the engine nacelle. Taking a closer look, we see the interior layouts for all 5 variants are near identical. All but the CJ3 Plus have the Proline 21 avionics. All use the Williams FJ44 engines, just different dash numbers. All have a cabin height of 4 feet 8 inches. Range, you're not going to sit on the aircraft for 4 to 5 hours, so it's really negligible. Fuel burn, plus or minus 145 gallons an hour. Takeoff distance, all in the low 3s. And we can draw these comparisons with all aircraft in the small jet category. However, if we want to focus our efforts on just the in-production aircraft, now we can do a true apples-to-apples comparison with fact-based data. How many are in service? What's the original cost new? How are the models doing on the pre-owned markets? What's the average fuel burn? Based on the average stage length of the fleet. When do the major airframe inspections due? And so forth. Our next category is the midsize, consisting of the Hawker 900 XP, G150, Citation Latitude, and Legacy 450. Rebranded the Praetor 500 if you change out the winglets, and that's only 4 of the 18 different models available in this category. Once again, we can easily generate a side-by-side comparison. and look at all the critical areas in what we need to know to make an informed decision. If you want to view only those in current production, click a button, and here you go. When did they start? How many have been built? Which is usually a pretty good indicator of how popular the model is. What's the true length of the cabin that you actually occupy, excluding the lavatory and galley? What's the true range of each model? Not what the brochures tell us. How about average fuel burns? As you can see, there are a lot of variables to consider. The next category, super midsize. It actually began with the Hawker 4000, shown in the upper left-hand corner, and was soon joined by the G200, Bombardier's Challenger 300, Legacy 500, Praetor 600, and variants Challenger 350, G280, and the Longitude, comprising 9 models. Keep in mind, when a variant of an aircraft enters service, it will generally replace the aircraft from which it was designed. By way of example, the Challenger 350 replaced the 300, the 280, the 200, and so forth. And this in and of itself can display how each aircraft holds up to market depreciation over time. What distinguishes aircraft in the category is the 2-zone stand-up cabin, full galley and lav, and a 3,000 nautical mile range, which all surpass the midsize category, but don't quite meet the requirements of the large jet class. And as we've demonstrated previously, we can easily segregate in production from out of production. Large cabin category include aircraft such as the G500, the 5500, the 900LX, and yes, the Challenger 650 and Falcon 2000LX, which can be a bit confusing. However, in the name game, when the original Falcon 900 entered service in 1984 with its 3-zone cabin, it went in direct competition to the G4 that entered service in 86. About the same time as the Challenger 601 with its 2-zone cabin, and all 3 fell in the large cabin category. In 1995, Falcon 2000 came into production and went directly against the 601. However, as opposed to starting a new category, all these aircraft were lumped into one, establishing the large jet category, and today we have 20 models that make up this category, and when we isolate current production aircraft, we're left with 5 out of 20, which can further be segregated with the Challenger 650 versus the 2000 Easy, and the 5500 against the G500, which leaves the 900 Easy filling a niche in the middle. Yes, it's a bit confusing, but that leads us into the next category, the ultra-long range. And at the top of the charts are the Falcon 8X, Global 7500, G600, plus the G50, and its predecessor, the G5, and all 4 global variants. What establishes this category is a 6,000 nautical mile range and prices that start right around $40 million. When the Global Express and G5 entered service in the mid-90s and tops out on the low end of around $65 million for the G650 ER and $70 million for the 7500. What seems to be a lot of aircraft in this category can be easily whittled down by viewing current production alone. And now we have 5 models from which to choose, all comparable in class, capability, and price. Now, what's truly amazing is the sheer number of 650s that have entered service and continue to this day. 515 aircraft, priced on average of $65 million. Do the math. It's an astronomical number. For the Rousseau Report, I'm Dennis Rousseau. Thank you for tuning in.